Okay, this is take one of the individual video that I have to turn in for 8th period pre-AP algebra. So here I'm explaining the isosceles triangle, which is a triangle that has two of its sides as the same length. And that little mark and that little mark, that pretty much means equal when it comes to triangles. So as you can see, those sides are equal. And well, that little half circle thing shows an angle. And so an example of this would be these two sides. Since I have that equal, it means that those numbers should be equal as well. And since all triangles equal 180, you could find the missing part here with these two numbers by adding them and subtracting them from 180, and 50 would be the missing link. The equilateral triangle is a triangle in which all three sides are equal. So as you could see, same symbols, but now it's on all three sides. And an example could be 60, 60, 60, which equal 180. Now the isosceles triangle with algebra, same exact thing, except now you're using algebraic equations to pretty much give you what the sides are. So here this is 2x minus 9, and this side is x plus 5. They're different equations, but they equal the same thing. So you would get 2x minus 9, and you would make it equal to x plus 5, and then you solve. And you solve for x, which would give you 14. So you input 14 into the x of both equations, and they both equal 19 in total. So both sides are 19. Now the next one would be same thing, algebraic equations, but with the equilateral triangle. So here the only difference is that now all three sides are equal. So here the example I use are three different algebraic equations, but which all equal the same thing. So here, if you want to choose, you choose two equations, doesn't really matter which ones. I chose this one and this one because it's easier to me. 4x plus 8 equals 3x plus 12. You solve for x, which would give you 4. If you input 4 into the x's here, they all equal 24, which is correct, as in, well, because they should all be the same, since it's an equilateral triangle. Literally has equal in the name. And now we're moving on to distance formulas. Well, not distance, but there's three formulas: distance, midpoint, and endpoint. And so first one we're starting off with is distance. Distance formula is the formula used to find the distance between 2 points, and the reason for why I underline distance is because each formula, they each give you one thing. In this case, distance. It's in the name. So the formula for this is you would put square root, and in the square root you'd put in parentheses x2 minus x, well, not x2 per se, but more like the x of the second point and the x of the first point. You subtract them, put them there, and then you would put that honestly forgot the name of that little number there, but you would put it right there on top. Same thing here, but with y's instead. And in the middle you put plus, because whatever you get here, you would add them together. And then of course you would square root the number. So the example, you get point A, -4, 1, point B, 3, -1. You input them. So since it's minus a negative, that means plus. So 3 plus 4, 7. And then -1 minus 1, -2. And then you would get these. And you get 49 and 4. You add them, 53. Square root it, 7.28. And that's your distance between those 2 points. If there's a stop in the video, it's because I had to record another video, since I could only record 5 minutes at a time. Okay, so now we're at the midpoint formula. This is a formula used to find the midpoint between 2 points. So for here, the formulas, well, in my opinion, way different. So you would get the x from point 1 and the x from point 2, and then add them together and then divide it by 2. Same thing with y. So the example is you have point G and point H. Point G is 7 and negative 5. Point H is 9, negative 1. You input them. 7 plus 9, 16. Negative 5 plus negative 1, which would be negative 5 minus 1, negative 6, divided by 2. You get 8 and negative 3. And that's the midpoint between these two. So now we're at the endpoint formula, which is a formula used to find the endpoint between a midpoint and another normal point. And by normal, I would mean something like this. So the formula for this would be 2mx minus x from point 1, which would equal x. And the m is just the midpoint. And then here, same thing, but with y instead. So the example here would be your midpoint is negative 1 and 2. And then your normal point would be 3 and negative 5. So you input that. The 2 stays here. You would multiply it into here, or in this case distribute, and negative 1 because that's from the midpoint, 2 here because that's from the midpoint as well, and then these two numbers you get them from here. X goes here, y goes here. You solve, negative 5 for x and 9 for y, and that's your endpoint. And that's going to be it.